Concern about our safety here at home in the wake of the strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. Breaking news today. Immigration and Customs agents announced they have arrested 15 illegal Iranian immigrants since Sunday. One of them admitted to ties to Hezbollah in Lebanon. A law enforcement source told Fox News the FBI is closely watching for any Iranian-backed sleeper agents in the wake of Operation Midnight Hammer. During the Biden administration, border agents arrested more than 1,500 Iranians who entered illegally at our southern border. They let nearly half of them go. President Trump on that this morning.
Biden let a lot of supercells in. Biden was an incompetent president, had no idea what he was doing. He let a lot of supercells in, many from Iran. But hopefully we'll take care of them. What Biden did to this country should never be forgotten.
Justice correspondent David Spunt is in Washington. David.
Well, Harris, the news about the 15 Iranian nationals coming illegally into the U.S. is no surprise to the people at the Justice Department, the FBI, and, of course, the Department of Homeland Security. According to authorities, one of them has ties to Hezbollah. Another is an alleged former sniper for the Iranian army. At a budget hearing yesterday, Attorney General Pam Bondi said the number of Iranians illegally in the United States continues to grow.
It's well over 1,000 have entered our country, and I can tell you we are on high alert, and everyone is looking at that very closely.
Now, she says budget cuts won't affect the overall mission. DOJ and the FBI continue to focus on threats toward President Trump himself as a result of his ordering of the killing of this man, General Qasem Soleimani, in January 2020. Assassination plots originating in Iran, not only toward President Trump, but to U.S. residents who once lived in Iran. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, seen there yesterday, was asked about sleeper cells in the United States. Those are groups of people who live among us in the U.S. quietly until ordered to act.
We've seen some from overseas and some that have been here, maybe gone overseas for a short period of time, become radicalized and come back, or individuals that are right here in the United States.
Noem held a conference call with some of the nation's governors over the weekend to pledge federal resources to help on the state level to combat any threats, whether federal or local. Attorney General Bondi back in front of lawmakers tomorrow to talk about the DOJ budget, but you can expect some of these topics also will likely come up.
No
Back
doubt.
to you.
David, thank you. In focus now, Joey Jones, retired U.S. Marine bomb tech and Fox News contributor. Look, we got a big job to do after what ex-President Biden left behind. I would not have guessed that many Iranian illegals, though, would still be trying to get in.
Yeah, and you have to find out, are these dissidents or are they bad actors? And probably a mix of both. I think if I take any solace in what's happening right now, it's this idea that if there are sleeper cells in our country, they were here before this war broke out. And we were actively...
So you think that?
Well, for the most part, yes. I mean, I think that President Trump has a much better control of the border than... So,
Indeed.
you know, post June 13th, I think we have as much control of our border as we can have. So if there are sleeper cells here that are active, chances are they were here before this war broke out. And the reason why I bring that up is we have such good agencies and such good law enforcement officers and tactics to combat outside infiltrators. The real threat are lone wolf, people that are from here that get inspired. Because the way we combat them is we track communication and purchases, things of that nature. If you're coordinating something, you're working with someone else, and we have an amazing ability to get inside those conversations. If those conversations are going on inside your head, that's different. And that's the real threat. So then the coordination is people screaming intifada, just like 10 years ago when they would scream jihad. And someone being inspired by that energy, whether that energy is purposefully that type of violent or not.
Yeah, Mahmoud Khalil was let out by a judge this week. He was the agitator and activist on the Columbia University campus. The federal government has accused him of being with ties and support of, if you will, probably more than ties, of Hamas.
Yeah, and so somebody like that, chances are he's not going to orchestrate a terrorist attack. But there might be someone in this country just crazy enough that, you know, in response to defending his honor, does something bad. And that's what is so difficult to combat against, because if someone makes that decision while driving their vehicle and turns towards the sidewalk, what do we have to combat against that other than force hardening or, you know, structure hardening, force protection? And that can't happen everywhere. So it is a threat, and it is something we have to be worried about. And we need to let our law enforcement officers do what they can to protect us. And in the public space, we need to think about the words we use and how much we let people scream hateful things without any type of rebuke.
Because the hate, you know, the speech itself is often more protected than some people would wish that it would. But you fought for this country. You fought for our right to do that. It is when those turn into actions where the crimes begin. And we've seen lack of any sort of decorum, if you will, in regard to that. People just think their words and their actions don't matter.
You have the right to be hateful and stupid in this country. You don't have the right to be unchecked in your hate and stupidity. And that's the difference. I don't mean people need to be locked up, but there needs to be responsible people in positions of power, either on universities or in Congress, that say the same thing. You don't have to like President Trump or agree with his policies to understand that your rhetoric will resonate with crazy people.
Yeah, that applies to politicians too. Maxine Waters.
Absolutely.
And others. Okay, we'll move on. Those U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites are raising fears of a potential rise in anti-Semitic attacks. Well, it was already off the charts, the threat against them. Already, they've exploded in recent years, and that's the focus of a House hearing actually later today. Florida Congressman Jared Moskowitz is Jewish and sits on the subcommittee running that hearing.
Anti-Semitism is at an all-time height right now. You see Jewish businesses, Jewish people walking around the streets being targeted. Right now, it seems that, hating Jews is the cool thing to do. It's in vogue. It's hot on TikTok, and it's a real problem in this country. It reminds me of the things my grandmother told me, and she was part of the Kindertransport out of Germany and survived the Holocaust.
I wonder how it goes with some of the comments his colleagues have made, like Ilhan Omar and others. Oh, to be a fly on the wall there. Moskowitz is a Democrat and has had firsthand knowledge of the dangers. Last year, police arrested a man near his home carrying a gun and an anti-Semitic manifesto with his name on it. Just a few other high-profile recent examples. A suspected arsonist torched Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home. A gunman killed 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C., and a suspect injured 15 peaceful Jewish activists with a firebomb in Boulder, Colorado. Again, work to do.
No, absolutely. It really blows my mind that we live in this country in 2025 and people are killed and assassinated because of the fact they have an ethnic and religious connection to another country, Israel. And that's at best case scenario, as people are connecting Jews with what's going on in Israel. At worst case scenario, they simply hate them for being Jewish. And I don't understand that. I've never hated anyone for being anything other than for trying to kill me and the people I love. That is the type of crazy and evil that we have to eradicate. I don't care where your ire is pointed, if it's hating Republicans for being Republicans or Jews for being Jews. I don't understand how anyone in this country cannot condemn these things. And sometimes silence is affirmation. And so I think the most important thing, just like after 9/11, the most important voices to combat radical Islamic terror would have been Islamic leaders. There was silence there. Right now, the most important voices to combat anti-Semitism outside of a few would be congressional leaders, those that are connected to the Jewish community that may be on the left.
I wrote it down. Silence is affirmation. Critics are lacing into a Georgetown University professor and calling for him to be fired. It's over this post. I'm not an expert, but I assume Iran could still get a bomb easily. I hope Iran does some symbolic strike on a base. Republican Congressman Randy Fine posted, the president of Georgetown will be before the Education Workforce Committee soon. This demon had better be gone by then. Another user with, these are the people teaching your kids at college and universities. Georgetown should fire him. And this one, Georgetown, enough. Joey.
Yeah, I went to Georgetown. So
no, you did not.
Yeah, I did. I went to Georgetown.
We didn't even know that.
So I went to Georgetown. Here's the deal. For the most part, most professors I had were adjunct, and regardless of their political affiliation, I had a great relationship with them. I wish I were there right now and I was in that man's class, because if I could sit in front of him, he would feel so small and so insignificant and so stupid to say something like that.
All right. I'm going to ask my team, Rachel, would you repeat that, please? Okay, the House and Senate briefing has been postponed. That was supposed to be going on. So we are watching for any developments coming out of that, and that's key. Joey, I appreciate so much you being here. Thank you very much. And your words, I did. Silence is affirmation. We got to get it together. Thank you for watching the Faulkner Focus. More on that situation with the briefing coming up. Outnumbered is after the break.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.